Hi, my name is Thomas and you're watching Casual DIY channel. In today's episode we'll be looking at how to improve your mitre gauge that comes with your table saw, as usually they're not very good. Check out the video. The table saw I've got is the Evolution Rage 5S and the mitre gauge on it is just not very good. It does have the wobble to it, side to side, up and down. It's just not very good. The fence over here is way too short. There's no support for your workpiece at all, and the clamp mechanism here is just awkward to use. The first task I want to tackle is actually changing the runner itself, and the runner for it I'm going to do in the similar fashion as I did for my crosscut sled for the table. So I'm actually going to be using a HDPE plastic. I've got a sheet. I do use this to make molds for resin casting, but in this scenario it's a perfect material as well. It's hard. I can cut it to the size I want. It will not expand or contract in different times of the year as if you were to do the runner from wood. If you don't have access to plastic of some sort like this, then the only solution I would suggest is to use really high quality plywood, as if you do use hardwoods or anything like that, again it will contract or expand during different seasons of the year, and it basically will not fit the mitre slot as well as something that doesn't have that problem. So that's what I'm going to be using. So let's take this apart. We're not going to use the clamp. We're not going to use the fence. So these are the parts we're going to reuse in our project. Everything else, keep for safekeeping. Right then, let's measure the mitre slot. Now, in my table saw, the mitre slot is actually a T-shaped one. However, that doesn't matter in our project. We're not going to be utilizing the T-shape at all. It's not needed, and it just would be a waste of effort. So the width of the mitre slot is 19.5 millimeters. That's at the top where you've got the throat of the T-shape, and the depth of the mitre slot is 7.5 millimeters. The HDPE plastic sheet I'm going to be using is 2 centimeters in thickness. So in this case, I actually need to remove 0.5 millimeter from it to be able to fit it in that mitre slot, which is not too bad. We can sort that out in a second. And it's 50 centimeters in length, and I actually want to leave it that long for extra stability. As you can see, I'm making the cut on my table saw, and as mentioned before, the depth of the mitre slot was 7.5 millimeters, and we don't need that much either. And in my case, I'm going for 6 millimeters of thickness. And the best method to make sure our runner is fitting snugly in the mitre slot is to, well, offer it from time to time, make small adjustments each time, and just try it out. Maybe a bit of sanding here and there to make sure it's a really nice snug fit. Now it's time to establish the middle, dead on middle on our runner. So we can install the point that will indicate at what degree we currently are, and obviously attach the mitre gauge itself. Okay, so as you can see, it all fits really nicely, no issues, very simple. Now this knob over here, for my liking, is way too small, and I want to use that to be able to push my material through, so I need something a bit more substantial. And for that I found a piece of a dowel I had lying about in my workshop. I'm just going to pre-drill a larger hole in it, install one of the hex drive head nuts, and that will be my new handle. And now it's time to sort out the fence itself. Now in my case I'm going for a fairly large one. It's 80 centimeters long, 12 centimeters tall, and it's just a laminated melamine board. I want the mitre gauge to be right in the center of this board, and there will not be any ability to move it left to right. Hence it's quite wide. And I'm going to show you why I made that decision in just a few minutes. But now let's sort out the fence. I'm also going to add some T-tracks at the top of it that will give me the ability to use some jigs and stops. I've got some edge banding left from my project where I made the pillar drill table. I'm going to use it here just to give the fence that smooth movement on my table, so as the rough edge of the chipboard could cause some issues. I'm just going to go around with the edge banding around the perimeter of the board. So let's have a look how it works. Slots in there, no issues. No side movement at all. But most importantly, I can use it on both of the mitre slots, just like so. And that's why I wanted a longer fence. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to raise the blade and I'm going to make a cut on each side from each mitre slot. What that will give me a groove, an indicator where the blade's going to go. So that's a fantastic guide. On top of it, the fence at all times will support the workpiece, the wood that we're going to be cutting, and it will be preventing any tear out whilst we're pushing the material through the blade. So that's a definitely win-win situation. After that, we'll tilt the blade to 45-degree angle, as this is the most common angle I will be using in any of my projects, and we'll make another cut in the fence on both sides. So the first thing we need to do before we actually make the cut is to make sure our fence is straight to the blade at 90 degrees. If it's not, you need to make the adjustment. Mine is slightly off, but it's ever so easy to make the adjustment. And it's at perfect 90 degrees. Spot on. Now I can adjust the pin showing me where I am exactly. At the minute, as you can see, it's off slightly. I think it's about on 2 degrees, so we need to adjust it that it's at 0 degrees. And now in the future, if I'm going to tilt the fence itself, I know that these scales are absolutely accurate. And as you can see, we've got perfect indicators now where we are, where the blade's gonna be, so we can line up your piece absolutely perfectly. And thanks to the T-track on top, you can make some stop blocks if you want to go for some repetitive cuts. Now you're gonna ask me the question, because I know it's gonna come, how about if I want to change the angle of the fence itself? Again, not a problem at all. Tilt it to, for example, 45 degrees, like so. And as you can see, the blade, depending obviously on what height, will go into the fence in a different location than to these two. Although if it will be too high, i.e. if you're cutting a really thick material, it may overlap with the straight cuts over here, but you're still going to retain most of it there. And the same would apply if we went with this fence on the second mitre slot. In most cases, these cuts, if you change the angle on the mitre gauge, should not overlap each other. Although if that does happen and you're going to damage your fence, it's so easy to replace it. It's just a piece of chipboard or plywood or whatever else you're going to be using. We haven't used glue anywhere. It's just the T-track on top, which is screwed onto, and that's it. T-track on top, change it over, 2 holes in the front, and that's it. You've got a new fence. From my perspective, I'm actually going to be using it as it is right now, so 90 degrees to the table blades and with the 45 cut angles. That's the most common thing I'm going to be using it for, but it all depends on your needs and what setups you've got in your workshop. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please consider subscribing to it, and if you do, change that bell notification to all so you won't miss any of my future projects and any of my future videos. And also, don't forget to drop me that like button down below. But for today, guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Take care.